You go into the Marine Corps in early 2001,
hmm
and then, of course, 9/11 is going to come in September.
hmm
So I'm interested in the difference that that made to you as a Marine. On September 10th, 2001, you probably aren't consciously thinking about it at the time, but you have a conception of yourself as a Marine, September
hmm
10. I'm guessing September 12, being a Marine means something different to you. I'm guessing 9/11 kind of changes how you think about, being a Marine. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it changed a lot, and the what I thought was going to happen, or what my initial um, response was, or reaction was like, we're going to war. Like the dudes they were packing up their stuff like the next day, like ready to go, like we were going to the field. Like they were just throwing everything in like their packs and sea bags and was like, we're ready, like let's go. And we didn't go anywhere for a while, but um I mean we did go, but at that point it's just like we were all expecting to be, like somebody was gonna show up with a caravan, a convoy of buses were gonna pull up, and we were all just gonna load all our stuff up and wave goodbye to our families, and we're gonna head off, like you see in the movies. But that didn't happen at all. But it definitely changed the way that we looked at what we did, what our job was, and how the effort and the little things and the details and the learning, and asking more questions, and like, because the uncertainty, it's the fear of the unknown. Like you don't know what that looks like. You don't know what that feels like. You know how
Mm.
to do your job, right? You know how to repeat the muscle movements and the actions that you've been trained to do over and over and over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
But you don't know how to do it in an environment where there's an aggressor doing the same thing aimed at you, you know?
Right.
So,
Was there a sense, I mean, after 9/11, sounds like then, before 9/11, I don't, you know, I don't remember that there were any big issues. There hadn't been since the early 90s, the Gulf War, right?
right.
So, you're Marine before 9/11, then you're Marine through 9/11, and then after 9/11. Was there a sense of certainty in your mind that, well, maybe we didn't ship out today, but we're going to ship out. There's going to be a fight. I'm a Marine. I'm almost certainly going to get into it at some point.
Yeah, that was the messaging. From day one, from September 11th on, it was like, we don't know when, but it's happening. We're, best belief from the leadership at the highest levels, things are being planned, things are, there's stuff in the works. Um, it was a very, I don't want to say hurry up and wait, but it was very tense. And it's like, okay, everybody, every day you're waiting, you're anticipating, um, when's it our turn? When
Yeah.
is, and then eventually getting um, assigned to a MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit deployment. It was like, okay, this is it. Like we're going to something's going to happen during this time.
Where did that mute take you?
So interestingly, that was in 2003. So it took some time for us, my unit, to actually leave and
Mm.
go anywhere, right? But we went to Kosovo, went to UAE, went to Djibouti, Africa. Uh, yeah, went to a couple of different places over there. And oddly enough, we were on the way back, and they said, "Hey, if we make it through the Suez before we get the call, then we're going home." And we'd already been extended once. They said, "If we don't, we're going into Iraq because these are the things that are planning, and this is what's going on." And sure enough, we didn't make it, and we got the call. So it's like,
You
all
went
right,
through that.
yeah, yeah,
What was the response? Because I mean, by now you've got a war going on in Afghanistan. 2003, we go into Iraq.
hmm
You're on this cruise, you're visiting various ports and so on. now the word comes, we're going to Iraq, which means, all right, now I'm a Marine, so we're going to be mixing it up.
Yeah.
What was the response from the Marines on the ship? What was your own response when word came, we're going to Iraq?
Excitement. It's like I quit it to you have this dog in a cage that every couple days you walk by and you poke it with a stick, get it pissed off, right? And then you keep walking. And then eventually one day you poke it with a stick and then you open the gate to the cage,
Yeah,
you know. Um,
yeah.
and that was the energy and that was the feeling on the ship and with the unit.
Now, were you part of the original invasion?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you're on a ship then, so I mean, did the ship port and you guys just
Yep.
walked off the ship and joined
So
the rest of the force?
we yeah, so what happened is we all the MEU we ported at Kuwaiti Naval Base. We got staged on the border. The ground
Wow.
combat element got staged on the border, and then we crossed the line of departure in Safwan, Kuwait, and drove up.
What was your job at the time?
So I was a newly promoted corporal. Um, I was on a howitzer section as an artilleryman. I was the ammo team chief. So all the rounds that my howitzer section was assigned or was provided was my job to keep accountability, to move things around, to organize them all, to keep track, to fuse, to prep all the rounds and all the charges, to make sure that everything was clean and ready to go. And then when it was time to pick up everything and move, that whole truck, all of that equipment, all the ammo was my responsibility.
Wow.
And I was also a turret gunner.
How long were you there that first tour in Iraq?
Uh, I think we were there. We were in country for a little over, oh, I think 2 months.
So I mean, so if I'm hearing you, then you're there right at that beginning stage where it looks like Gulf War 2.0. You
Yep.
know, pretty much a walkover. This is done, mission accomplished, and you're out
Mm.
before the ID start going off and all that, or how does that fit?
Yeah, it was so
Memory?
it wasn't like it wasn't a breeze through, that's for sure. Like especially in areas like Nasiriyah, there was a lot of stuff going on there. Um, a lot of shooting, a lot of combat, especially for artillery guys like me. There were times where an insane amount of of artillery shelling firing was happening. But there were certain after a certain point, when some of the lead elements or the elements that were ahead of us, they made it to Baghdad and then a little bit further up, then it was like sustainment. We, you
When
um,
you say a lot of firing, was it back and forth?
no, I mean, it was mostly like, hey, these are targets of opportunity. These are targets that we need to either eliminate, suppress, whatever, for ground troops, for the infantry units that were maneuvering and moving to these different objectives and or different phase lines as well. And um, so we would, there was supporting fires that were needed for those movements and those objectives.
Did you feel in this initial push, did you feel that you were up against a significant adversary?
Yes, yes and no, because we would start hearing, we would get word that, there was a lot of, Iraqi troops that were surrendering and, they were, as soon as they see, large amounts of military, US military, they would like, hey, we don't want to like waving the white flag, but as a young Marine, you're like, and everybody, you're still being told like you need to be vigilant. You still need to, because there are still like very diehard Saddam loyalists, and they were, you know, still targeting the military pretty heavily, and there were pockets of resistance. So you couldn't really take anything for granted.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you're not describing like a serious slugfest. It sounds like it's pretty one-sided, but there is some stuff coming back at you.
Yeah, for sure. And there were definitely units that got caught in a lot of, you know, a lot of tough spots early on, but most of that time, most of those units were, I mean, it was really really quick for them, just kind of
Yeah.
overwhelming the enemy forces.
Do you have memories as you're moving deeper into Iraq of, I've seen these images of Iraqi people just kind of standing along the side of the road, and I don't know about at the very beginning. I know, at least a bit into it, you start seeing the celebrations and things like that. What memories do you have of Iraqis, civilians that, you're seeing as you're moving deeper into Iraq?
Yeah, we definitely I definitely saw, people along the side of the road, people cheering, like waving and, you know, um they were faces that looked happy to see us. There were faces that were suspicious and curious and, cautious, and then there were ones that didn't look so friendly at all. So it was a
Mm.
mixed bag, right? And the majority of the guys that I was with were in the back of a truck, and I was the one that was on the top, so I got to see everything. And I was able to do the eye to eye thing, and to because that was my job, was, essentially, like, again, talking about growing up in a certain environment and being hyper vigilant and being able to try and read situations and look at people's faces and tell, like, assess and identify threats before um, it becomes volatile. Um, yeah, there were some friendly faces, and they were celebrating and glad we were there, right? Um,
Yeah.
and there were definitely times when they weren't so glad.
Wow. As you play that tape in your mind, you're up there on top of the vehicle and you can see all this stuff. Is there a particular scene that especially kind of stands out in your mind of one thing you saw? Probably a lot of things, but something that comes to your mind of something you saw that for some reason just really does stick in your memory?
Yeah, I think there were because so at the time, I, had small kids, and I was fairly young, right? And it's it's one thing, like, you kind of, because your brain is in, like, survival mode, and you're in the, like, you're a very aggressive state, and you're very, like, I don't want to say dehumanizing, but you have to, like, nobody here matters as much as the people in my home, in my family, right? Because it's like a survival thing, you have to do whatever it takes to ensure you get back to those people, right? But seeing small kids along the side of the road, or in certain, like, horrible areas, no shoes on, barely any clothes, just tattered, homes, like, that was just like, I was like, wow, like, this is insane. Like, people live like this and, like, grow up like this and are subjected to, this type of war and poverty and conflict and death and destruction. Um, and here I am, like, well, I thought I had it bad growing up, like,
Mm.
these kids, so it makes you look at your family and your kids and other kids in a whole different perspective. And I think that was probably the most um, probably jarring, for thing that I was able to take away from, and it affected me in a way that still to this day is lasting, I would say.
As you're with the Marines making rapid progress into Iraq, there's some resistance, but
Hmm.
it sounds like you guys are, it's pretty overwhelming from their perspective.
Right.
You're seeing these folks along the side of the road. Some of them are seem to be celebrating. You see the kids. Was there the feeling that, you were part of a liberation, that this was a liberation, that people of Iraq were being liberated?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I mean. Again, that you think about, like, that was the messaging from the highest of higher, we were liberating the Iraqi people from the evil dictator Saddam Hussein. And
Right,
that's what we were like, we're here to save the day type deal. Um,
right.
so it
Okay.
definitely felt a lot like that.
Did you make it all the way to Baghdad?
No, I think we were like 20 miles south of Baghdad.
Okay.
And then we turned around and came back. They were like, you guys got to get out of here. Because at that point, we were almost 11 months deployed.
Oh, right, because you'd been on the cruise before. So you leave Iraq about 2 months after the invasion?
Yep. Yep. So I think it was April of '03.
So in your mind, was it pretty much over? I mean, okay, so now there's mopping up and Iraq is done and
Sustainment and rebuilding. It's like sustain the security posture, rebuild the infrastructure, and get people in place that live there and that are from there to run the country that are not a dictatorship. So, and that in my mind, that was what was going to happen, right?
all right.
Yeah.
When did you go back to Iraq?
In 2004. So let's see, late. It was probably 6 months later. We left again, a different unit this time. So we got back home. I think it was like 3 or 4 months later. The battalion that I was with, Second Battalion, 10th Marines, got a new battalion commander, got a new mission. They said, hey, we're going to do, you know, these different operations. We're not doing traditional, artillery operations. It's a traditional artillery mission. And if those of you who just got back, if you don't want to go, if you want to do something different, no harm, no foul. Just
All right.
talk to your chain of command. I was like, dude, I'm not going back. Like, no, I want to go do a B billet. I want to go do something different, right? Um, again, like I had two young kids, and I didn't I had to, so I went to Fifth Battalion, 10th Marines, which is like right across the street. And I was there a month, and they were like, hey, we just got a mission. We're going to Iraq. I'm like, okay.
Guess you know.
Yeah, right. So then and at the time, 5th Battalion, 10th Marines. So it was weird because all the battalions in 10th Marine Regiment essentially were assigned to a Marine Expeditionary Unit. Well, 5th Battalion, 10th Marines, all they did was unit deployment program deployments to Japan. So if you spent a large majority of your time in 5th Battalion, 10th Marines, all you did was go to Okinawa.
Mhm.
So myself and the battery first sergeant, who was a tanker before he became a first sergeant, we were the only two Marines in the battery, which was Sierra Battery 510, that had combat experience. And I'm
Wow.
a corporal, and he's a first sergeant. So it's like we have this new mission. We don't necessarily know what it is or what it's going to be, but we know we're not taking howitzers, we're not shooting. So
Wow.
preparation and like the pre-deployment training program non-existent. It's like we don't know what we're doing. We don't like we need to do something. We have to start. So September, I want to say September timeframe of 2004 is when we left.
Wow.
Yeah,
And by that time, the insurgency has kicked up.
yeah, oh yeah. They're
Were
about to kick
you,
off the elections.
yeah, were you aware that, because when you pull out of Iraq the first time, there's a sense of mission accomplished, and that's what
Hmm.
everybody thinks, or
Hmm.
just about everybody. By the time you go back the second time, now we've got this insurgency brewing. Were you aware of that at the time?
Oh yeah, very well aware. Yeah, the first Fallujah battle had already taken place, and we showed up right after that. So it was very well on everyone's radar of what was going on, the vacuum the void that was quickly filling with anyone who wanted to take a shot at the title, so to speak.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
they wanted their chance at martyrdom, and we were proud to give it to them.
Wow.
So we were kind of ready for that, expecting the worst.
Where did you go on the second tour? Where were you based?
So we were on my battery it was Sierra Battery 510, 10th Marines. So we were split up two platoons. One was on the Syrian border and one was on the Jordanian border. So my platoon was on the Syrian border in a little town called Walid.
Hmm.
and the other platoon was right up the border on the Jordanian border in a place called Tribil.
And what's the mission there in that area?
Border security, essentially supporting the local police, the local border patrol, and the
Yeah.
local border security there, and trying to prevent smuggling, prevent, anyone from infiltrating from Syria into the inner parts of Iraq.
So a lot of times when we think of Iraq and a lot of Iraq combat vets you talk to, what you're talking about is you're in these cities and you've got potential snipers everywhere and IEDs potentially everywhere as you're going down these narrow, crowded streets.
Mhm.
Sounds like it's a very different environment where you are.
Yeah, so the first time, I mean, we were all over the place, and there were certain times when we pulled into a radio station, set up there, and started doing patrol operations in cities and in a couple cities and a couple towns that had some elevated spots, but it wasn't too crazy. And then this last second deployment, where we were at, um, there was a small town and it was very sparsely populated, and um, it was wide open. Um,
Wow.
which seems to be is like, well, I mean, you can see the threat coming, you can see it, but the problem with that is like everything either starts to look like a threat until nothing looks like a threat, right? It's
Mm.
the pendulum effect. So, you know,
Yeah, so what kind of threats are you dealing with out where you are?
so the this is when the IED like thing is in full, tilt. So it's not just IEDs, it's VBIEDs, vehicle borne improvised explosive devices, right? Um, and so our schedule was set up in our so every squad of our platoon, we would do 8 hours at the port of entry where we would, scan vehicles, search vehicles coming in from Syria, um, personnel, and then we would do 8 hours on security at our COP, and we would do 8 hours on React, where you would do patrols through the town, you would do patrols around the local area, and kind of get an idea, using our human intelligence guys, um, and human exploitation teams, those guys to go out and talk to people, bring people in, detain whoever. Um, we had a Iraqi National Police Academy that we set up and that we were training, Iraqi police there at the point of entry. So the biggest threat was vehicle-borne IEDs, right? And it's a
Yeah.
very, that and when you're trying to secure a port of entry, as big as I mean, the next biggest town or city was Damascus, Syria. So you have people funneling in from Damascus to come in into Iraq, and you're screening literally hundreds of vehicles a day. Like my 12-man squad was screening. So like if you're like, well, if vehicle-borne IDs, like I'm inches away from every vehicle that comes through here during an 8 hour time period.
Wow.
So if something blows up, well, the only solace that you really have is that you probably won't feel anything, right? Which is kind of a sadistic way to look at it, but that's the reality of it, is
Wow.
because you're popping trunks and hoods and you're doing all the searches and you're looking for a contraband. You're looking for anything that would be of a threat. Uh,
Yeah, I was going to ask if you put dogs on the cars first, but it sounds
so
like,
we did have we had one Air Force dog handler. I think he showed up maybe a month or two into our deployment.
yeah,
But he can only be out there for so many hours a day.
right.
And then eventually we got an X-ray van, like a backscatter van that we would
Right.
park, and we started funneling all the vehicles through that. I mean, um, knowing what to look for, knowing, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a car or a bus or a truck packed full of explosives, it can drive by a van I mean, if it blows up, it blows up.
I mean, over time, in your own experience and talking with others, kind of learn over time that there's certain subtle things that if you see, you see certain subtle things, then this is potentially a problem. I mean, did you get to a place where you've got a car here, you look inside, you pick up the vibe of the people inside, and you kind of feel, okay, there's probably not going to be anything here. In another case, you look at the folks inside, pick up the vibe and think, yeah, this might be an issue. I mean, is that kind of what developed over time?
Yeah, I mean they were because you know the insurgents were basically they were stacking up and they were planning and doing preparations for the second Fallujah engagement, um, and you know any kind of sabotaging of the elections. Um, so they were trying to get as many people in as possible. So a lot of you know our mission was basically to look at military age males and either prevent them from entering or screen them heavily. You know, so if they were traveling with if there's even an odd number of male to female, you know, they're not a family, whatever the case was. And then sometimes you would have people that would get turned around. Hey, go back. Like, nope, you can't come in. Get out of here. Um, and they would try and come back through a couple times, have people like actually try and run through the checkpoint and not, you know, not stop, which didn't end very well for them. Unfortunately, but or fortunately, however you want to look at it. But yeah, you definitely get a sense of. I was a squad leader at the time, so I was the person in charge on site every time we would go there, or you know, there was no, you know, my platoon sergeant, none of the higher ups would they would rarely come to where we were doing these operations. But
Right.
so it was like, okay, being able to read people, look at people's body language, look at how they interacted with members of my squad, or how they interacted with me, how they interacted with the translator that we were using. And yeah, you could definitely you get the
Yeah.
spidey senses and you're like, nope, don't care. You know, you have people that work for Iraqi customs and they're like, oh, you know, he's good. No mujahideen, no mujahideen. I'm like, I don't care. Like, get out of here.
It just doesn't feel right.
No, no.
Um, when you say that the folks who tried to run, that it didn't end well for them, I'm assuming that means you guys, the rules of engagement said you could open up on them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Um,
absolutely.
so I'm not looking for any gory stories
Mhm.
or anything, but did any of the VBIDs did any of them go off when you were there?
Yeah, so we had not my location in the Tribune location. Um, we had a water truck filled with explosives that ran through the gate of the compound there and injured a lot of Marines. It killed two Marines, Corporal
Wow.
Ben Lee and Corporal Wyatt. Um, we lost those guys.
Corporal Lee and Corporal Wyatt?
Yeah.
Yeah. When the when they would run, is that they pull up to where you guys are and then they just hit the gas and take off, or is it that
Yeah.
they're coming at you at 50 miles an hour and then just keep blowing
Well,
through?
they would hit the serpentine and then they would either try to hit something or they would try and push through the serpentine or they would just like gun it, gag it, you know, and blow through.
And are you up on the vehicle with the weapon?
So I was on a rooftop. I would either be on a rooftop or I'd be at the gate at the point where people would come in at. So I kind of, as a squad leader, I would kind of float around. I bounce around. So I had like some people at a designated marksman, and it
Yeah.
was more of an observation. But it was like, hey, you know, I have radio comm, so like I had somebody that I basically trained. I said, these are the things you want to look for up here because at the time, believe it or not, like RCOs and optics and that was brand new. So we had I think we had like three per squad or four per squad, something like that. I had one. I had my assistant squad leader had one, and he was up on the rooftop, and we had a couple other ones, right?
Yeah.
So once I had them, like these are the things you want to look for. These are the anomalies. These are the types of body language, posture, and things of that nature. I would come down and I kind of float around, but that's where, um, you know, I was all over the place essentially.
Right. Yeah. How far into this tour was it when the two Marines were killed by the IE?
December 3rd. So I think we were there two months maybe.
What impact did that have just on how you approached the job, knowing that these guys had been lost?
For me, um, I got cold chills just now. Um, it wasn't a wake up call for me. It was when I looked at my guys after that, it was like an instant aging because I had kids, you know. I'm the vet. I'm the, the salty guy that's already been to Iraq and was there for the invasion and all this other stuff. So I show up and I have all these newer, younger guys, and you look in their face, and it was like 10 years had been taken from them instantly because they're like, wow, like these guys are gone and
Mm.
they're never coming back. And for the
Wow.
guys that were in Trabille, it was even worse, because having to witness what that looks like and to deal with the you know the traumatic event as it's happening. Um,
Right.
so it's a very it's the shock, and then there's the grief, and then there's the okay, but it's all very quick, you know, and then you're like, okay, now how do you let this not affect you in a negative way going forward,
Right.
um, so that you can still keep your head about you and ensure that everybody comes home.
And were you an E5 by this point?
Yeah, yeah.
You're a sergeant by this point,
Hmm.
and so then you also have the additional, I'm assuming you also have the additional burden of being in a leadership position.
Yep.
So is that part of the second thing as well? I mean, you're a corporal in the first one, but once you're an E5, I mean that's a leadership role.
Right.
Um, is that a little bit extra weight you've got on your shoulder too? The
Right.
feeling that these aren't just my fellow Marines, but these are
Yeah.
my guys. These are my Marines.
Well, that and we had a very good family, like a family involved program there. I knew, and I still to this day, like there's a lot of guys in my squad that I talk, like I'm communicating with. Her, like one guy, he was from my hometown,
Mm,
and me and his dad, like, were like best friends. Like he taught me how to play golf, and like so I know these guys' families for a lot of them,
yeah,
and that's an added obligation. Like I don't want to have to look at it. I don't have to. Nobody wants to do this, right? But I don't want to have to go back to these guys' families and say, I failed essentially. I wasn't able to do the thing that you put your faith in me and God above to do, and let's bring your kid back home safe. But and I know a lot of people, they experience that grief and feel that guilt, and it's a real thing, and it's so yeah, it's definitely a different type of weight for sure.
so is that pretty much your entire second tour then? I mean, you're out there, border security. Um, are you out on the roads as well, doing IED sweeps and things like that,
Yeah,
or
so
or
we
not?
would every day during our 8 hours of um, react or whatever, we would do drive up and down the border, and go back between Trabille and where we were at. We would drive around in the local area. There were a couple times where we would have to do convoys to some of the major bases around the area, snap VCPs and ECPs and stuff like that. So we
Yeah,
had a couple guys get hit with, roadside IEDs as well. But luckily no one got killed, just some serious shrapnel wounds. People had to get medevac, things of that nature. So,
yeah. You said that you worked with Iraqi police.
mhm.
What was your take on them after working with them for a while?
um, so at the time where we were at, it was a very corrupt situation and organization. In fact, we ended up doing a late night raid on their police station at one point and detained quite a few of them, um, because I mean they were essentially infiltrated by people that didn't have, Iraq's best interest in mind, and come to find out they were some key players that were cooperating with, you know, terrorist insurgents.
So did you have cases where it was clear that, this guy's wearing an Iraqi, police uniform, but he's playing both sides. He knows that a car is going to be coming in an hour, and he's going to try to get them through. I mean, did you come up with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there were a couple people that we had identified that we had pegged, um, that were, you could tell that they were looking for certain people, looking for certain vehicles, or you know, and they were supposed to be helping us or helping, the border, the people that worked at the point of entry, and they were just trying to get paid. And essentially, that's what it was. Like they were taking bribes from people to let them in.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
So at the end of your first tour in Iraq, there's
mhm,
this sense of, mission pretty much accomplished. Now I just need to stabilize, rebuild, good to go. You're stateside. Meantime, Fallujah happens, insurgency blows up. Now you're back for the second time.
mhm.
And you're out of there in 2005, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Yeah, you're out of there in 2005. Um, at the end of that second tour in Iraq, what was your sense of what was going on there?
Um, Probably not very not the same as a lot of people. Maybe, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not. So this is the time when Bush was it was American elections too, and he was trying to get reelected. And I was very not not happy with the fact that I was in Iraq again for a second time. And I don't want to say that I was jaded from that point going, but it definitely opened my eyes to a lot. Um,
So I mean, it sounds like you weren't persuaded by, the argument that we're gonna, you know, the reason we're staying now. I mean, the original thing, of course, was get Saddam out of power and the weapons of mass destruction, and then as we stay, then the focus turns to we got to tamp down the insurgency to help Iraq become a stable model of democracy in the Middle East. And it sounds like you're not very persuaded that this is going to happen.
no, no, just because like it's a different, the culture is not there for that. Like that, they don't want that. So for you to think that, oh yeah, well they're 10 years is going to be Walmart's out here and like this, like that's insane. Um, that's not going to happen. Um, Understanding people and understanding, culture, um, and history, and watching people move and operate and work in communities out there, it's so different. So no, I'm not at all um, believing that what they're saying we're there to do.
Yeah.
No.
How did you deal with that? Because you stay in the Corps. I mean, you
Hmm.
retire as an EA.
Hmm.
When you're back stateside, um, and the news from Iraq is, still pouring in over the coming years. What are you doing with these thoughts in your own mind? Are you keeping them to yourself, talking about them with higher ups? I'm just interested, if an E3 asks you, what do you think about this? How are you dealing with this as a Marine who's rising in the enlisted ranks in a leadership role?
So one thing I guess prided myself with, and I've taken pride in throughout my time, since I can remember being a Lance Corporal, is like I don't sugarcoat or filter. If you ask me for my opinion, I'm going to give it to you, and you can be the commandant or you can be a Lance Corporal, E3, it doesn't matter. Um, but just being honest and transparent. Like if you want to know why I think we're here, I'll tell you. If you want to know what I think this is accomplishing, I'll tell you that too. But see, ultimately, what kept me doing what I was doing is you have to remember, it, it's still a job, right? And it's a job that I believed in doing, is serving, yeah, serving the nation, serving our country, you know. But ultimately, it was serving the people that I was in charge of and serving the
Mm.
people that I worked with and doing whatever I was asked to do by those people above me to do the best of my ability. So,
And so, as you're back in Iraq for that second tour, and doubts are beginning to settle in about, what's going on around here, that's really what the tour is about just getting as many of your Marines home as possible, getting home yourself,
Hmm.
but getting as many of your Marines home as possible, and that's pretty much it. I'm committed to these Marines, and that's what this is about.
Well, we knew that we were part of a filtering force, if you will, that was trying to prevent as many military age males getting to Fallujah and getting to the inner cities of, major cities of Iraq, right? We were trying to stop the insurgency flow. Um, at where we were at on my second deployment. So that was like, okay, that makes sense to me. Like, get it. Like, the fight's going to be the fight. It's going to continue probably for years and years, long after we're gone, which in fact, that's actually what happened. So,
Right.
but in the time we're here, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're doing it. So it made sense, right? So that was a logic, and our mission was to do the best that we could in doing that.
Yeah, right. So even if it may not make a huge difference in the big picture, it's still an important thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do our job. Iraq is so, kind of murky, right, with the whole weapons of mass destruction thing, and which I know is that conversation is maybe a little more complicated than it often comes across, but um, Iraq is just kind of murky. There's no direct connection between Iraq and 9/11. Afghanistan, there is a direct
Hmm.
connection to 9/11. So, in your mind, was the fight in Afghanistan, did that seem more meaningful? Did it seem like it had more of a purpose? And here, I guess I'm asking before you get there.
Hmm.
Let's say it's a month out, you know you're going to Afghanistan. Is that where your mind is that, I'm not sure about that thing in Iraq, but this thing in Afghanistan, at least like it's clearer to me why we're there and what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, even my second deployment while I was in Iraq, I was like, we shouldn't even be here. We should be in Afghanistan. Like I felt like that's where the fight should have been, should have stayed. So then before going there, it was absolutely, I think it just made more sense to me. Like, okay, if we know that maybe not that's where they originated from, but that's where a large portion of this group is based out of, and that they need to be eliminated. They need to be removed in whatever way. Yeah, absolutely.